Hello and welcome to Blind Movie Club, the show where I pick a movie I've seen and show these two for the first time, followed by an in-depth open discussion. I'm your host, Jake. I know you thought we were doing that, but we're not.
He did say a surprise.
I did, and I didn't tell you when the surprise would be. It's now. I'm your host, Jake, and with me as always, my good co-host, Ian. And my other equally as good co-host, Joaquin.
Hey, that's me.
My co-hosts don't know what movie I'm going to recommend, but they're about to watch it with me for the first time, followed by an in-depth open discussion immediately afterwards.
Okay.
And I haven't said the title yet, but how are you guys feeling?
Nervous. I feel better than if we were watching this Best Picture.
Let me ask you guys, because we're forging this show as we speak.
Are we allowed to guess? Can we have a guessing game?
Sure.
What the hell? What do we have to go off? Jake thinks it's a good movie.
We need hints, right?
No.
So we have a 3-hint system.
No, because once I say the title of the movie, we're pretty much just going to get your quick reactions and then go watch it.
Okay.
And then come back.
All right.
No fun facts. No nothing.
Give me some sad facts.
Only depressing facts allowed.
Kevin Spacey's in this one. And
I want to ask you guys, though.
Is Kevin Spacey in this one?
he's
No.
racking his
No,
brain.
I had to think about that, though.
He's racking his brain.
All right.
No, so I will ask you guys. I want to get your opinions. Do you want this show to only be me giving you movies, or do you want to cycle through like Dealer's Choice?
See, the thing is, I hate that you're the only one that's allowed to give us surprises.
So you want to...
You made me watch Peacemaker, and that's not fair.
so
but
you
I
wanna
can't make
cycle.
you watch Garfield, Tale of Two Kitties.
All right, so you're in favor of cycling, Joaquin?
Of course I'm in favor.
Yeah.
Of
Okay, fair.
What the hell?
That's why I wanted you guys to get here
This is
early.
just Dealer's Choice 2?
It is going to be Garfield, Tale of Two Kitties.
Oh, for sure. Me and Joker
All right,
are both picking
so
Garfield.
Kevin
Tale of Two
Spacey, you know.
What's your guesses for what you think I'm going to get?
I think, can I at least have a general year? Like a 5-year gap.
And a genre would be nice, too.
2018 horror.
Oh, I hate horror.
Now, unlike Dealer's Choice, I want to, for the audience, there are rules that we kind of don't say on camera, but they're behind-the-scenes rules that we can't pick certain movies for Dealer's Choice. Music biopics, because we're going to get copyright strike to hell.
Yup.
We can't do stuff that, say, is just comedy, because we're just either going to laugh or not. You know, there's not a whole lot of that. There's like some stuff that we have to keep in mind. We're commentating for entertainment and turn it into a funny product. This has no fucking rules. You can pick anything, because we're going to watch it off camera.
Python!
But it has to be a movie. It can't just be a video of some guy fucking a girl.
Oh, trust me, there are tons of porn
Tons
movies.
of porn movies.
Sure.
Oh, don't you worry your little head.
You know what? You get one movie, so you could pick whatever. It's chill. I'm down with it. I will not veto, unless I have to veto for some reason, but we'll get there when we get there.
I really like that part where they did express anal.
I thought it was very imaginative.
Yeah, we're creative.
I wasn't really a big fan of the plot, but...
Directorial choice is pretty good.
Yeah.
So, anyway, I guess there's nothing left
I heard
except for me to say the movie.
2018.
Yeah.
Oh, unless you want to guess. What you got?
The only horror movie I can think of from that year is A Quiet Place for some reason.
Mhm.
And it's not A Quiet Place.
I got no idea.
No idea?
Yeah.
It's not A Quiet Place. It's a movie that nobody's probably heard of, so it's I didn't expect you guys to guess it. It is a movie I watched recently that, for the first time since, like, the fucking Grudge when I was, like, a child, I have been genuinely terrified by a movie.
That's
It
good.
is the first and most scary movie I've ever seen. Ever in my life.
Interesting.
I've never
Okay.
seen a movie scarier than this one. We're going to watch the hit film from 2018 by Gaspar Noé called Climax.
Oh, good. So it's like porn.
Half of the movie, the last half of the movie, is one uninterrupted take.
That's pretty cool.
Interesting.
So let's
That's
fucking go.
cool.
You guys ready?
Is that the climax of the movie, you would say?
Nope, it's just called Climax. All right, so we just watched Climax, the hit film.
Wow.
I want to give, before we start into it, I want to give more details. I purposely didn't tell you much before we watched it. I
Okay.
wanted to- So most of the film is improvised. Most of the lines of dialogue are improvised.
Oh, I could tell.
Yeah, the actors, well, quote, quote, actors, made their own kind of decisions and characters. There was a rough script, obviously, a framework to follow, but everybody interpreted a lot of what they wanted to do. It was shot in chronological order in only 15 days, and the longest take, of course, I mentioned earlier, lasts 42 minutes, and it's the entire last half of the movie until the end, minute. Only Sophia Batella and the one who puts acids in her eyes, only they had acting experience. Everybody else was just a dancer that they brought on set that day.
You know what the funny thing is? I thought I recognized the other girl from something, but I couldn't put my finger where.
I checked her filmography. I don't know her from anything,
Okay.
but she's obviously
I've
not
probably
like a
seen her at least once.
first film Climax. So so she's now doing stuff because of
Okay.
that. That's interesting. Okay, so it really was just Sophia Batella and nobody else. Okay, that makes sense. This director, and this is the important part, highly controversial, not for reasons. He's not like a racist, but like his movies have been generally, well, I'll just say it, they're weirder than this, and they get a negative reaction. This is the only one he's made with a positive reaction. Critics liked it, and it's got a general good audience score and stuff like that. I've watched 2 other of his movies, and I don't like them. I didn't like Irreversible, and I didn't like Enter the Void. So I went into this, and I was
And you're
like,
I fucking hate this guy.
I can't wait to not like this. And then I watched it, and I'm like, wow, that was actually unexpectedly did a lot for me. So I understand that you guys did not feel the same way I did, and that's okay. You know, we all have different opinions and tastes on it. But since I liked it, and I'm assuming you guys didn't, do you want me to go first?
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, we can talk about positives.
Sure. So I really want to talk about why I think this movie is really, really interesting. So this director usually doesn't follow a normal framework of a movie. Like Irreversible takes place in reverse chronological order, like that half of Memento where it's just backwards in time. This director hates normal movies and hates like normal 3-act structures and stuff. The decision to put the titles, the opening titles of the actors' names in the middle of the movie.
Can't say opening titles. That's the thing.
Yeah, the titles.
The title,
The middling titles.
You could just call them the credits, I guess, but they're either at the start or the end of a lot of movies, and he put them right in the middle, overlaid right after their freestyle dancing sequences. And I think that was a really interesting decision. I like the editing, which the director wrote, directed, and co-edited. So this is basically his baby. I really like the characters on second watch better than I did on the first watch. On first watch, I was like, okay, well, you know, they're just kind of here saying 2 lines each, and then it cuts, and then it just goes to them dancing. You know, it's not a whole lot going on. And then obviously the end of the movie happened and shit went down. But rewatching it, having like knowing what I've already known about the movie, I love the little details they put in. Like every time it cuts to say David, he's always saying he wants to like fuck her. I want to fuck her. That one, I fucked that one last week. I fucked 2 at the same time. And after, we're gonna go into spoilers by the way for the audience wondering. After everybody gets drugged up and everything goes to shit, he keeps getting dejected from having sex, which is just a normal thing. And if he were sober, would he just be like, damn, I really wanted to fuck her. But because he's on mega drugs, it happens over and over again, and he's getting like frustrated and angry. It's horngry, basically, to the point where towards the end of the movie, when he's walking down the hallway and literally every room he comes across to have sex, even some with dudes, they all turn him away. He starts crying. He's just so fragile in his masculinity. He just like starts breaking down. And then on the dance floor, when everything was hell, like literal red hell upside down and shit, he's just like breaking down emotionally and mentally on the dance floor. He's like crawling around, and there's this person trying to touch him, and he doesn't know whether to push them off of him or not, because he's like, am I really this far? Is this far? Like, there's a lot of interesting character things. And obviously, like the brother-sister relationship, I think that was really well established at first before shit really hit the fan with them. I love how it was established as him saying like, hey, you know, your boyfriend, he's not good for you or whatever. And like the sister's like, well, what the fuck's your problem? Now we know what his problem was. Even if he didn't realize it, subconsciously, that was a thing. So that was really interesting to see and like pick up on second watch. Like, oh shit, they really did talk about that and didn't say that's what it was, but it was like addressed and we just moved right on. And then later on, you double that back and it's like, oh my god.
I saw that coming in the first scene where they were doing the camera thing because he put his arm around her weird.
Yeah,
and she was looking very uncomfortable.
I see. I didn't pick that up as like he wants to do anything.
No,
you know?
It felt strange to have that part of that.
A little bit about the characters before I move on to my big positive. When it cuts to any of the women characters, they each have their own desires and feelings about certain situations. And then it cuts to any of the male characters, you know, in the middle where it's like establishing these characters and stuff like that, where it's just talking over drinks. All the male characters are horny and want to fuck. David is the epitome of that, obviously. But like, they're all generally just there like, I'm going to eat her ass. I'm going to do this. I'm so horny. They're so hot around, blah, blah, blah. So when you get into the second half and it becomes like a horror show and everybody's chasing everybody around, I mean, that's part of the horror of it. You don't know if they're like a dancer is going to approach you and fight you or fuck you or just laugh. Like, you don't know. That is a truly terrifying thought, in my opinion. Sophia Batella gives what I think is a top 10 all-time performance in a movie.
She's really good.
I think she's spectacular in this movie. And kind of one of the reasons is the other thing the movie does really well is the portrayal of people on drugs, especially when they don't know how much they drank, when they drank it, or...
Yeah, it was a bad trip because of the
worst trip. And then the environment goes haywire, everyone else is going haywire, and then the lights shut off, which just sparks everything. Because they were already feeling a bad trip, and then it becomes like the worst possible trip, which is the premise of the movie. the way she portrayed that, like when she's in that room alone and like she's losing her mind in the curtains and waving shit and dancing on the wall, and she sees that drawing of like the outside forest and just freezes, and then she's just like kind of transported. Like that really does happen if you're on fucking LSD and acid and shit. Like you do, a sensation or a feeling or like a texture can just transport you to somewhere else. The last thing I want to touch on, which I know you guys were talking about, you guys didn't really like, I like the way the camera moves in each scene.
I didn't dislike the camera movement. There's a couple editing choices that I didn't really enjoy, but the camera movement during the long takes is interesting.
I want to mention how, like, the reason why would be like it reflects the mental state of the characters in each of the scenes. So like it starts normal. The first half normal, maybe overhead shots, but generally it's just a static thing. It moves sometimes, but it's whatever. After the drugs, it gets more erratic. So sometimes it's like as they follow characters, they'll tip so the character takes up the full frame sideways, but it's from our perspective sideways. It's really tall to them. And then at the end of the movie, it's just completely inverted because that establishes like there's no hope, there's no saving grace, nobody's safe. We're all fucked. And that was, to me, that was a really interesting design choice to do it that way. So for those reasons and a little bit more, those general reasons, that's why I think this movie is really strong. It's not a 10 out of 10. It's not one of my favorite movies of all time. But it is the scariest. And I watched it, I got to give context, at like 1 a.m. I couldn't sleep for whatever reason that one day. I chose to put it on. And so, but I was still feeling that like tired energy, you know, when you could pass out, but you just can't. Yeah. And I watched this all night, and I literally could not sleep after. I was like, what the fuck? Like, I went to bed and turned all the lights off, and I was like, imagining in my head, like, is like one of those fucking dancers gonna fucking come approach me and start trying to, it was so weird. In that regard, movie worked perfectly. So.
Sure.
All right. So, now that I've established
I want to talk about
why I'm praising the movie, you guys can go ahead.
I think the dance choreography in this movie is phenomenal, obviously, because they're all dancers. I was very, very impressed with what was going on. They framed the dancing well. And like you said, I think this movie is well edited, but I don't like how every single transition for the first half of the movie is that fade to black, pop back in.
Fade to black. It's cut to black.
It's cut black, pop in.
Sure.
I'm not a huge fan. Like, if you do it sporadically every once in a while, but it was like the only cut for the first 45 minutes of the film. And I'm like, okay. It's like Star Wars screen wipe. Like
okay, sure.
I was getting a little bored with that. Otherwise, the editing's actually really solid. I'm not going to lie. The camera choices, again, for the most part, really, really good. The upside down at the end, I like it. A little long, but I liked it.
Sure, that's a fair criticism.
The acting is really good, mostly because of the improv, but I have a problem with the improv that I'll talk about later. The music slaps. The music is so good.
Through and through.
Yeah.
Whole time.
Music, choreography, really, really great. The acting, very, very solid. Like, there are very good elements to this film that I think do shine through. For sure. I like a lot of the dancing's just fun. I like propeller arms at the beginning where it's just like helicopter arming around, and I'm just like, yes, helicopter arms. Like, there are some things that will definitely suck you in, but there's some problems that I have with it afterwards.
Sure.
Take me away hard.
Okay.
Do you have any positives, Joaquin? You have to have some positives. It's not all bad.
I know Jokin's probably the most negative if I had to assume.
The acting is okay, but at the same time, when you don't really give people scripts and you're only giving people rough outlines and allowing them to do what they want to do, there's not really much room left there for bad acting.
What'd you think of Sophia Batella's performance?
It's okay.
It's okay.
I think she does a really good job. I like Sophia Batella a lot. I've seen her in a couple things now, and I really like her. Okay. Even in Tom Cruise's movie, she's not the fucking problem. She's does a fine job.
She's definitely not, yeah.
Remember when we were watching, I'm like, Sophia Batella's doing good. Like, that's all I could say positive about that movie.
The small talk between some of the two, I could...
Yeah, there's some funny stuff.
I can get a chuckle out sometimes, because, you know, it's just, I like the human element of it. They're not being forced to read a script. And that's a pro of improv. Yeah. I also have problems with improv, but that is a pro of having improv. It shot fine. Not a huge fan. Like at the end,
I think it goes on a little too long.
I
think if it was the last between 5 and 10 minutes, it feels like 15, 20.
The thing is, I don't think it adds to the movie at all. It only detracts for me because it's an interesting choice, but why is that choice there? Why why bother having
the eclectic, hectic mess of it? Is why it's there, and the whole it is.
It just makes things hard. It just makes things harder to read.
Yeah, it definitely makes things harder to read, but I think in that situation, it's trying to put you in the mind of the characters. Which, yeah, sure. I agree with your analysis of that, and think it's a solid choice. I just think it was a little too long. Yeah. I think if you shave 5 minutes off of that, it has more impact.
I will agree with you there. I think one of the movie's biggest flaws is that
a lot of things feel too long.
Yeah, I think it lingers on people dancing a little too long. And now, granted,
I have a
I know
point,
but granted, I'm loving the dancing sequences, which is like a lot of the movie, right? And not even just like the part of the story movie, but like where they're doing freestyles each, and it introduces each of their characters before their title cards come up to say like, this is us, this is what we're doing. That's pretty interesting to me. But I will concede that like easily all of those dancing shots, like with the freestyles, could have been half as long and just as effective.
Yeah. So I guess if we're gonna talk a little bit about negatives, this movie's pacing is not good at all. It's very, very slow.
Bro, it's straight up.
Are you talking about mostly the first half? Before
even the latter half.
All of it.
I have a really, really big problem with the first half, especially the intro sequence. I understand why it's there, and I don't think it's like a casting tape, and I don't think that's disinteresting. But it does last 15 minutes, where I think you could have gotten some of those things from better conversation with an actual script. My big problem with this movie is, I even wrote it down, this movie's first half feels like it was 4 pages of a script that says dance and talk about fucking.
Yep, pretty much.
Really bad. Awful.
Yeah.
I don't think the script for this movie is good at all. If there was one, because I don't think there was.
Let's just say there's barely one.
It's a general guideline of things that they have to follow.
I genuinely had a problem with how boring the first half of the movie is. You're watching dancing and you're like, oh, this is interesting. When's the character stuff going to start? And then it just doesn't. It's just, and when it gets to the conversations, it could have been stuff of substance. It could have been more. And it's just talking about fucking, and then talking about fucking, and then abortion, and then do you want to get married, and then talking about fucking. It's just not interesting to me.
Did you guys have a problem with the violence? Because it's a little more than most.
I got a little, I hate to use the word triggered, but I got, I don't like self-harm, suicide stuff.
Okay.
And that definitely, I didn't like that.
Hey, that's fair.
At all.
So to me, I didn't really enjoy it. It's not that it like grossed me out.
I feel like it's needless because how uninterested I am in the characters.
There's that.
Because we weren't introduced to her really until that point, and I'm like, well, what's her deal? What's going on? And then we get that, and then it just feels. I feel detached.
It feels to me like they're just trying to gross you out. They're not trying to make you more interested in this character. They're trying to make you feel like
wrong. It's
shock. It's an unnerving feeling, but it's a cheap unnerving feeling because it's not. It's to me, it's just not natural at all.
Yep.
Like why kick her in the stomach?
Yeah.
Like we're talking at that. I know, but I'm like trying to like lead into what it came through. Like you kicked her in the stomach and then they show her. And then the whole party's picking on her because they think she drugged the punch. And like I can't say obviously not her because it's not revealed.
It's mostly obviously not her.
She's one of 2 people that didn't drink the punch.
Yes.
But even the characters should have like recognized that, but they all started picking on her. And like Ian said, the self-harm is just not.
I would say that the characters picking on her, they probably wouldn't have done what they did if they were sober or not high.
I do want to lead into a point on that as well in a little bit. But talking about that, I said a lot of the weird stuff in this movie. I like weird movies a lot, but
you love Lighthouse.
I love the Lighthouse. I love the House of Jack built. The House of Jack built's so good. Like there are certain movies that have that weird, creepy feeling that I attach to those. Those are some of my favorite movies ever. Like Planet of the Apes. It's fucking weird. And they do a lot of hectic, eclectic, weird things in that movie to elicit reactions, especially with the music, that makes me go, ooh, I like this because of this.
Right.
This movie felt sort of like Saw in some of those aspects, where it's just like, here's a thing, and it's supposed to unnerve you. It didn't have it because I wasn't there. I think it's just because of the lack of planning in the script for me personally. But if those conversations are more interesting, if we get inklings of these things, I still would have been like upset by seeing it visually, but I wouldn't have think it was an undeserved. I saw that and I was mad that it was on screen because it wasn't earned. I didn't feel like this movie earned to do something like that to get those reactions out of people. And that's a really big problem for me. If you're doing something along those lines, and you said this director was very controversial, I can see why. You have to earn it. You have to earn using certain things, especially like that
Yep.
are very impactful and very heavy on people.
Yes.
And it's not earned. It's just not earned.
So actually, because I'm sure, Joke, when you want to say something too, but like to talk about that a little bit with the director, I watched Irreversible, a film I do not like. In it, and this isn't one of the reasons I don't like it. I'm generally not, like you said, triggered by most things. I'm pretty, agreeable to watch more or less anything as long as it's done well.
I think if it's done well and earned, most things, I would say most, not all things are on the table.
Right.
But most things can be on the table because it is a aspect of life, and I don't think you should shy away from certain aspects of life.
Right.
But obviously some things people just don't want to see. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like,
There's that. Yeah.
To talk about like Irreversible, which is relevant to what you're talking about, the plot of the movie, which again is told in reverse scene order, it's these two guys trying to find the rapist and eventual murderer of his girlfriend. Okay. So the movie starts with them having found him. But so as the movie goes on and we go backward in time, they show her getting raped and murdered.
Yeah,
and it's like a long 5 minutes.
Very unnecessary.
Yeah. So I understand the choice to do it in the sense that like it makes us really, really, really feel for the character and really hate the guy. But
there are ways you don't like him because of that already.
Yeah, like there are ways to.
Yeah.
I don't feel like the length of the scene was really necessary because I still hate him anyway.
Yeah.
The length of the rape does not make me like or not like the rape. Like I don't like rape inherently.
Yes.
You don't have to.
Like you could imply it, and you don't have to. You don't have to show something like that.
Right.
That's
exactly.
a very wrong.
Mm-hmm. Or like if you're gonna show it, like you don't have to go. That movie went on too long with it. It went really into detail and stuff like that, and I don't think
that's the wrong way to do it.
Yeah, I don't think for the narrative it made.
It's like to bring up another French film, Cuties, where in order to tell you that child pornography is wrong, they show a bunch of child pornography essentially.
No, not Cuties.
Hey, the French don't know how to make a film. That's all I'm hearing.
I mean, that's not true.
No,
they're picking out two select examples.
Portrait of a Lady on Fire, French film, fantastic, best on-screen romance I think I've ever seen.
Oh, really?
But yes, it's very, very good. They have so much great like tension between the two characters, and honestly, it's phenomenal. But a lot of the French movies I've seen have like weird, needless shit that just shouldn't be in anything for some reason.
That's fair.
I don't know what it is. I think it's like the art, imitating art and life that they take in a different way culturally than we do.
Yeah, and also stuff like that. Like they're chill with like human body parts, whereas like in America, it's very stigmatized. You can't show boobies.
I don't have a problem with that. I have a problem with the first 45 minutes of your movie being dancing and talking about sex instead of setting up the characters to make me care more about the last 45 minutes.
I would agree that the characters aren't set up super fleshed out, but I think dancing and talking about sex, specifically the talking scenes, are setting up the characters to an extent. I mean, so a lot of them do have arcs.
To an extent, sure, but I'm really missing. I'm missing a lot. Yeah, I'm missing any attachment to these characters.
It doesn't tell me much about the characters aside from they're all horny.
I barely understand who likes who. Like, I know David fucked Selva and wants to fuck the two girls, and then Omar doesn't get along with Gazelle's brother because her brother wants to fuck her. Then the girl, as a kid, that she could have aborted, and he fries himself. That was really sad. It's sad because a child died unnecessarily.
I think that scene is probably one of the most traumatic of all.
I think that scene is the one instance of a shock value that was set up. It was very blatant that it was going to happen, but it was at least earned. Because they gave you that Selva cared for him, that his mother cared for him, that his mother didn't get to see him very often. Like that character development with a mother and him in the back room where they're talking, and he's like, "Oh, you're a good mom," you know, like all that.
And I'll agree that a lot of it's underdeveloped with other characters, but with that character,
with those three characters specifically, I think there's a really, really good dynamic there, and I think it's very interesting.
And the fact that the movie keeps going back to them to establish this is their relationship,
I think those are the more important, like, interesting parts. But it's a very minimal part of the movie for me, and I was like, man, this movie is really just not going anywhere, like 45 minutes in. And then all this stuff started happening. I'm like, okay, it's going to pick up and get interesting. And then it still really didn't. There's a lot of scenes. I was like, is the last half of this movie just yelling? I was, the last 50% of it just yelling is an actual note that I have.
Lots of yelling, punching, fucking crashing into walls.
It just feels like you told your guys what you wanted, and then they did it, and you went, boom.
Wiped our hands clean.
Yeah, it's very... disjointed and messy, and I think that is because of the heavy improv. But I don't dislike the improv for how well the actors did. I dislike what the actors did because it doesn't make a film. It makes a good collection of conversations, natural flowing. The dancing is very, very impressive, but it's not interesting to watch for 1.5 hours of a almost, or like 1 hour of the 1.5 hour long film. If you cut this dancing in half, the movie's maybe 50 minutes long.
Yeah, that's true.
And
and again, like
fluff.
I'm only talking about cutting the dancing like with the freestyle right in the middle before the title cards. To cut that down. The 20 minutes prior with this opening sequence and they all celebrate at the end, that's kind of great. It's a strong way to start
you're
the movie.
allowed, dude. You definitely are allowed to have that impressive show of choreography. 100%. They did an impressive show of choreography, a little bit of character, impressive show of choreography. Stuff starts happening, more choreography while stuff's happening, and then a little bit of character, and then the movie ends.
Well, I just think that like what you were talking about with like the audition tapes at the beginning of the movie. If you had started with the 20-minute one take opening dance and party after,
and then cut to
that would have been really cool in my opinion.
I'm gonna have a hot take here. I don't even think the choreography was that impressive.
No, the dancing's very impressive.
Let me explain.
That is the craziest thing I've heard today.
Let me explain.
I think I understand.
To me, the choreography itself feels like improv too. It feels like they especially like at the beginning of the movie, yes, it is sort of impressive, but it kind of feels like just one person's jumping in and doing their thing, and like they can do whatever they want on that dance floor, and then people just have to huddle around them and not do anything.
Are you talking about the opening of the movie?
I'm talking about the opening and at that sequence where they're in the circle and like everybody keeps jumping in.
In the circle, I agree with you. It's just freestyle after freestyle. But in the beginning,
is a group dance number essentially.
I was really impressed. I like when they're grabbing their arms and walking like a spider.
It didn't really feel like it had any sort of direction to it. That's my problem with it.
Fair.
And this whole movie doesn't feel like it has any direction to it.
I agree with that. Yeah.
This movie to me just feels lazy and boring because of it. Because you're relying so much on improv. Yeah. And because of that, anything can go like in any direction. The direction that this movie took is just not good. I'm sorry, it's just not good.
Okay.
You know,
it never has that hook, line, and sinker for me.
Yeah.
Okay.
A lot of the like a weirder film has to have a hook that drags you in. The Lighthouse, the first parts of the movie, you could say the first part of the movie is pretty slow, right?
Sure.
They're having dinner, working, talking. But the thing about that is the way that it's shot obviously has that the harsh blacks on the black and white draws you in. You're like, okay, look, the look of the film.
Yes.
I wouldn't call slow the same thing as boring.
No, that's what I'm saying. This movie started off very slow. That being said, this movie never had that moment for me where I went,
so
like, I never got that, like, okay, well, where's this going? This movie for me was very, very semi-predictable, but also improv, and then it just ends. And I didn't know who did it. Pretty plain and cut clear.
Yep.
Once you realize it at the end. Because a couple characters had motivations to do it, and I do want to talk about that in a second.
Sure.
But for me, what this movie does is it sets up some stuff, doesn't really pay it off because it doesn't have the character moments, and then just ends, and you're like, oh, she did it. That's cool. And it kind of just ends. And that's okay. It's okay not to like 50 minutes of improv voice line or whatever. I don't think it's necessarily terrible, but it just never gripped me. I don't think he earned using some of the stuff that he did.
Yeah.
But I really think that it could have been David. I really think that it could have been, I don't remember the kid's name. That's how important he was.
Which one?
The one that was a virgin.
Oh, the little boy?
Yeah.
Okay, who's friends with the big daddy?
Yeah.
Yep.
I never learned his name. And for the whole movie,
I kept
thought
calling him David.
Yeah, you did. Or it could have been her, obviously, because she was talking about the LSD at the beginning, and they said spiked with LSD. And there was a scene where the mother was talking about the van in the morning taking care of something, and I was like, oh, that's kind of ominous. That didn't go anywhere. That was a misdirection on purpose. I was like, okay, there's a couple characters that it could be, you know. Sure. People seem not to like Selva, so I don't know what's going on there. But David started freaking out. I think he or boyfriend with daddy had the two strongest motivations, personally.
I do want to talk about the ending twist.
Before you do, I kind of want to add. Yeah. I kind of want to add on that.
Or the brother, because he wanted to fuck his sister.
Fair.
It doesn't do a good enough job painting who it could be. That just adds to the laziness of the movie. I think it's trying.
It's trying to leave it open, but leaving it too open.
It's leaving it too open, and it's not giving enough threads that where it could lead.
A good mystery movie leaves it open but narrows it down so the audience can feel in and watch certain people.
It makes the audience feel more invested. Yes, and that because again, this movie doesn't really have that point.
Yeah,
and I want to talk more about the laziness. Jake, you were kind of praising like the lack of like how everything was sort of like shaky. I disagree. I just think that's laziness disguised as innovation.
It's not laziness because you could have just as easily put it on a gimbal, like you were saying.
And why not? Why didn't you do that?
Because for the reasons I said.
The reasons I disagree with the reasons you said. I don't think that's what they had in mind. If that's what they had in mind, they probably could have done a better way of doing that. Let me call up.
Do you think they didn't know what a gimbal was? This is like his 15th movie or whatever. Like he knows how
to
use
a camera. He's so controversial because he makes bad movies.
He's not controversial due to lack of gimbal. Like
he's controversial as showing multiple minutes of rape.
The first third of the movie was very much standard, kind of like a normal movie is, like with the camera not really moving much. And when people dance, it either moved back and forth between them or it was overhead. Whereas the second, this chunk, like the middle part of the movie, was starting to get hazy and not out of focus. It's all very clearly in focus, but moving with the camera with their actions and body.
I actually agree with Jake that it was a conscious decision. I'm not going to lie to you. I think that just because I feel like the script is lazy, but the editing choices and cinematography style didn't feel lazy. I just didn't like some of them.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like there's a difference between those things. I know he's the one who like co-edited, wrote, directed, produced, acted, whatever. But like, I think that is a deliberate choice on the editing and production and cinematography side.
I mean, you two see it. I don't see it like that.
It's understandable.
And, you know, listen, I am always one. I feel like I'm the one that praises the most. Like, you know, limitation breeds creativity.
Oh, yeah.
But at the same time, it's a double-edged sword because if you're so limited, it kind of makes... It can be an easy gateway to being lazy.
That's fair.
The same way, like, oh, wow, you have so much stuff available here. As an example, like... the Michael Bay Transformers movies.
Yeah.
You have so much CG available here that at that time, even though you put like the CGI artists are putting like a lot of hard work in getting this stuff done.
It feels cheap and lazy when you watch the product. It feels cheap and lazy
when you watch the product. And
that's fair.
It works both ways.
And even though I say things like, oh, Michael Bay sequel Transformers fucking blow so hard, they're the worst things ever, I'll always sit there and say, well, the crew did their job.
Yep.
They did.
They did exactly what was asked.
Yeah, exactly.
The CGI artists, God bless their souls, sitting in their computers for months on end.
And I still think they did a good job.
With that specifically. Yep. No other aspect of the movie.
That's not their fault.
Yeah, no, not at all. But yeah, okay, I see your point. So it just didn't work for you. It
didn't work.
Decision. Yeah. Okay, that's fair.
Completely understandable. I think to go back on like that mystery aspect.
Right. I want to talk about the twist.
I think the mystery aspect would be more impactful if it was narrowed down more. It feels like you have to watch everybody instead of watching a few select people.
Yep.
Think of a movie like we just watched it, Death on the Nile.
Mm-hmm.
Death on the Nile is completely laid out that a couple characters have way more motivation to do it than others.
Mm-hmm.
You get one character, two characters, three characters, maybe a fourth.
Mm-hmm.
This movie, I was like 5, 6, 7. It felt too open. And it strays your focus away and loses some of that engagement that you would have about the mystery. I wanted to know the entire time, and I wasn't satisfied at the end because I was like, oh, that's fine.
So that's kind of... It's funny you bring up Death on the Nile, actually, because I do want to talk about that a little bit. You see, that movie is a movie that I absolutely love.
Yeah.
But one of my only criticisms, besides the fact they couldn't shoot on location in a lot of places...
Oh my God,
screen.
yep. We talked about that, yeah.
One of my only possible negative things for that awesome movie is the fact that they spent so much time at the beginning establishing the person who ends up being the person that watching it halfway through, you're like, well, they did so much work with this character. Why wouldn't it be this character?
Yeah, they tried to pull the rug out from under you and then pulled the rug out again and then put the rug back.
They set up who it was and then dangled red herrings, and we're like, well, what's the setup for?
Yeah.
And then it was them, and it's like, oh, duh.
Yep.
So,
Murder on the Orient Express did the same thing as well. Very, very well. I think better than the second one, obviously.
so
where you have like 3 or 4 people that you can choose from, and it makes you focus on certain things way more. And
so
this movie
to
had a
jump
lack of
over
focus.
there to the half of the room that didn't like Climax for just a moment, that's one of my big negatives is the twist, because honestly, it's the opposite of Death in the Nile's problem, which is also a problem, where it was over set up. It wasn't set up. And if I get it with the line of dialogue like, oh, hey, haha, I knew some boyfriend who dropped acid in his eyes. Cutting to the end, now, tiny detail I did like, when the cops bust open the door and everybody's dead or unconscious,
She's the one
except
sitting there dancing.
she's dancing. She's the only one.
Yep.
That's a cool detail. But Ian, you're absolutely right. I joke, and I'm sure you feel the same way. I don't think that twist paid off.
Yeah,
I don't
no,
think
absolutely not.
I
like,
wanted to
felt
know, and
that
I was
way.
very unsatisfied because I didn't get any inklings.
I did, yeah. Okay, so on rewatch, because I didn't like it the first time I watched it with the twist. I didn't like that aspect of it. I rewatched it with you guys just now, obviously, and I watched more of her character do stuff. Again, it's the same scenes where it's like her girlfriend is like, act like I don't exist. What the hell? What are you doing?
You're boring.
You're boring. What the hell? And then she's just flat out like stone facing her. I'm trying to watch it like, okay, does this mean that like this character is straight up trying to ignore everybody because they're all about to go to shit and she knows that? Is that what's happening? Because if so, I feel like I could have gotten more from her, maybe more audition tape shit from her or something, more conversation with her. 'Cause she barely talks.
Yeah.
So
I also want to say the cast is too big. They needed to cut it down. They tried to let everybody have their moments. Not everybody needed their moments.
Exactly.
this could have been a really strong like dozen people, but it was like almost 20.
Yeah.
So
I think even 10 would be nice. A smaller troop. Like
because then you could
5x5.
Yep.
you could spend the same time, like the run time, developing more with less.
Yes.
Yep.
Absolutely.
So I would agree absolutely with those points, that those are what's holding it back from being like perfect, you know, because I love everything else almost. So but yeah, I really don't like the twist, which sucks. It's like the focal point at the end.
It's the point of the movie. The whole movie hinges on this, basically.
Basically, yeah.
The whole movie hinges on the climax.
Ba-dum-bum-bum. Yeah.
And Joken, you mentioned when we were watching it, like right afterwards, you were like, "Man, putting that stuff in the middle feels like a pretentious art house choice." Yeah, it is a pretentious art house choice, but like I like art house stuff, but if it feels pretentious, I'm immediately calling someone out.
Yeah, exactly. That's my thing.
I don't feel like it was pretentious because I feel like that should have been 15 minutes into the film, because I feel like that dance sequence should have been the start. Then you do the credits, then you do the audition tape, then you go into everything else. So it should have been dance sequence, credits, audition tape, conversations, drug.
Okay.
That's how it should have been structured, because it still works in the traditional sense. That's still a traditional film. It's not completely normal, which you would have liked better. I'm telling you how to improve your film, sir. Like it would have been structured properly. It still would have not had the character development I would have liked, but I think it would have at least structured it in a way that would have felt less pretentious, because it did, because it shouldn't have been where it was. That scene, I don't think should have been where it was in the film.
Right.
I don't think he's super pretentious. Like, oh, this is important.
I will say that like I didn't mind so much the location of the title credits, or I don't know what you call it, just the credits.
Do you like the life is death knowledge?
No,
that's fucking garbage.
No, I
Fuck
did not.
you.
That was terrible. You don't need it. Take it out. Movie's better for it.
Yeah.
I am adding philosophy to the film.
Oh well, get the fuck out of this film,
Dude, if you're adding philosophy into the film, do it with the characters saying that stuff. Don't put something on screen.
And
that's
also, like,
pretentious.
The message where it's like life is a precious thing, death is a precious thing, like, or something like that.
Death
whatever.
whatever.
Death is an extraordinary experience.
The thing is, like, the movie illustrates those points visually,
And then it tells you.
it doesn't need to say so.
You know what it should have done? At the beginning of the movie, they should have went Paris in big bold letters. I didn't know where we were.
None of that shit. Woo!
Wow, the one.
All we knew was they spoke French and some.
Not
English.
even all of them spoke
And
French.
some English.
The movie, the opening says that it's, it alleges it's based on real events, but it's obviously not. It's just, trying to fuck with you, whatever. But, No, yeah, I will completely concede that a lot of that stuff is just out the window.
Oh, yeah.
Take it out, better movie for it. And again, you can be untraditional. For example, this movie, I like most of what it did. It's untraditional. But at the same time, when you're making choices that aren't really established by other movies that have done excellent jobs at it, like I'd say Casablanca, brilliant movie, very standard, nothing like out of the ordinary. But when you're doing stuff like this, where you're like, I'm going to switch up the 3-act structure, I'm going to switch up the character development sequences, the order they take place. When you do that kind of stuff, you're either going to hit it or not.
Yeah. And when you don't hit it, you
don't
really do not hit it.
The only thing that I think we're having a dissonance on is that I think he hit most of what he did. And I didn't think he hit a lot of
I don't
parts.
have a problem with the way he did the 3-act structure. I think it could have been swapped around to be better, but I don't dislike what he did. I dislike the fact that the film script is probably 8 pages.
Yeah.
That's my problem.
Yeah.
Movies that defy, like, look at Christopher Nolan. Do people hate Christopher Nolan? No. Inception, Tenet, and Memento all fuck with a 3-act structure. Memento is one of the best films of all time.
That is my favorite movie that fucks with the 3-act structure.
Memento is one of the best films of all time, in my opinion. And it doesn't follow a 3-act structure. And when it does, it's worse for it. Memento in order is not good.
There's nothing.
Well, it's fine. It's good because the movie's good.
There's absolutely nothing wrong with a 3-act structure. This guy just hates it. Because like my favorite movie is The Matrix. You're Scott Pilgrim. You're Ratatouille. All 3-act structures. There's nothing wrong with them.
Yeah.
But this guy is just like the normal way movies are done. Get out.
No.
And again, I think that's one of the reasons that he's critically, and I haven't seen all of his stuff. I've seen like 3. This is the 3rd one I've seen of him. But he's made like 10 or 12 movies. I think one of the reasons why he's gotten mostly shit reviews, except for this one, obviously, is the fact that he just refuses to follow conventions of the genre, which power to him if you want to do that, but don't expect everybody to give you good reviews all the time.
You can't not follow things from a 3-act structure standpoint and then also add a bunch of controversial shit and then like you're piling up on yourself.
Yeah.
For sure.
I feel like he just doesn't give a shit.
I feel like in this movie especially, like, you don't earn that. You don't show a 5-minute rape scene when your movie is supposed to be in non-sequential order. Like, people are already off-put by the structure. And if you don't have it as tight as a whistle and, like, actually interesting, when you throw something like that's a fucking monkey wrench made of fire into a film. You're throwing that in there and you're like, people are going to like this. And they're like, bro, what the fuck? You didn't earn this.
You said fire, and that reminded me of the girl that got
on fire, and then they never addressed it again.
They showed it they showed her taking a shower. I'm pretty sure that was her, and then they showed her at the very end of the movie with a burn mark on her head, trying to splash water on it. That was it. Those are the 2 things you did with. What was the point of that?
It's to weird you out,
to gross you out. And I hate gross out humor.
Okay, so
it's not humor, but
I'm sorry. I hate gross out for the point of just being gross out.
Yes. I will say that what was interesting to me about that sequence is how would somebody who catches on fire, who's not mentally stable or there because of the drugs, react to it? Because she's not stopping, dropping, and rolling like she would have.
So
obviously, she's like, "Oh my god, I'm in like this weird state of what the fuck."
I do actually want to talk a little bit about the state of the drugs. While I think it is interesting, and especially with some bad trip stuff, somewhat accurate, it's not as accurate. I have been a tour guide for people on LSD. It's definitely exaggerated.
It's okay. Well,
sure, but did your LSD guys also have sangria?
Whoa! No, I will say
a whole other branch.
It's definitely exaggerated, and some of it is to a point of trying to make people uncomfortable on purpose, and some of it is not bad.
The stuff that makes you uncomfortable on purpose, I will defend because it's kind of the genre and what's trying to do. But as far as realism, I would say the movie very deliberately sets up the structure that, okay, they're in this secluded place. Okay, they don't know how much they take or when they started taking it. And the lights go out and they're already tripping bad. Like, in that context, dude, people are nuts. Like, they're not gonna...
but I think there's definitely an over-exaggeration.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
To an extent, sure. But given that, like, you're watching people around you stab themselves and die and shit, and you don't know what the fuck's happening. You don't even know any... Like, you're, like, freaking out, and then you feel something, you're like, oh, shit, that feeling. Or... Again, I bring it up again, but the Sophia Batella freaking out in that room alone, seeing the painting and getting transported, that's dead on. I've also been a tour guide a lot of times, and I'm not going to disclose what I have or have not done. But that to me is like, holy shit, that's like, I've seen that in real life, you know, like that's happened. So the fact that the movie portrayed that,
I think that part is one of the more accurate parts for sure. I know.
And granted, there's probably little details in there that aren't quite it. Maybe I would still say it's like 90% solid as far as realism.
Maybe 70.
Okay,
but that's still a passing grade. In France, it's an extra passing grade because they have grading systems that make more sense. But
yeah, that's true.
Yeah, the American grading system is bad. I don't have too much more to talk about. I think overall, I'm just gonna tell you maybe a 2 out of 10.
Okay.
I think the acting is very strong, the choreography is very strong, the music is really good, and there are some aspects of the story that I do think are quite tickling and interesting. But it's an hour and a half long movie, and I think maybe 15 minutes of the character stuff is actually interesting, and it's because there's only like 30 minutes of character stuff, and definitely messy and doesn't earn a lot of what it's trying to do.
Okay.
You know, Ian, it's funny. After all this shit I gave the movie, I thought, I'd have a lower score than you, but I'm giving it a 3.
Whoa!
There are things. Again, I fucking really do not like this movie, but it's not abysmal. It's nowhere.
I think the uncomfortable factor for me of what it did not earn and then just did anyway brings it down.
Trust me, it brings it down for me too. Like this is a 3's not good.
No, I know.
But I basically said everything I wanted to say. Jake, what about you?
Well,
you seem to be the biggest defender.
I am. I was again just like you said.
I'm giving it a 5.
Just like you said, Joker. I did not expect a higher score than Ian. But all right, I will say this: this movie is not one of my favorite movies of all time. It's not up there with like the best of the best. I think Sophia Batella is exceptionally good. Like
she is
all-time exceptional, best of the best in terms of acting.
Sure.
And this movie does a lot of really cool creative things. There are still a few things that hamper it down for me. I thought when I first watched it was an 8. I'm going to go 9. I've elevated. Because rewatching, I pick up little details like the fact that the Acid Eye girl is still dancing at the end. Like the fact that that's the one that comes to mind in this particular one. I didn't prepare this speech at all. But I would say 9 out of 10. I think this movie is really strong. I tell you guys, I watched it at 1 a.m. is when I started to watch it because I couldn't sleep. And it was a trip for me. I empathized with them. I was like having a trip with them in a way. And at 2:30 a.m. when the movie ended, I was like, oh, I'm not going to bed now. That's out the window. I'm going to be up till 5.
Bed? Nope. That's fair.
Yeah. So that was that. Yeah, so that was the first episode of Blind Movie Club, and Ian is going next. So we'll find out what he does when he does it, not ahead of time. I refuse to have any inkling ahead of time.
I like that.
So do you guys like this show, by the way, the structure?
It's definitely interesting. I like the podcast-style shows where we go a little bit more in-depth. It doesn't allow me to be as dumb, which is definitely my favorite part.
Because there is a need on the channel. Because it's either commentaries or the Best Picture podcast. And Best Pictures are a set list of movies. And commentaries, you have to wrap up pretty quickly at the end. Yeah. I wanted a long-form thing like this. And I didn't want to wait until we were done with Best Pictures. We're like a third through right now.
Yeah.
So that's completely understandable.
Yeah.
No, definitely interesting. Definitely enjoyable. Recommend a better movie next time.
I did. Damn it.
You didn't.
I did. No, all right. Well, Ian, the job's up to you. And again, there's no rules with what you can or can't pick. Just try and lean towards long discussion pieces. So I doubt I'd have much to say about, like, Good Burger if you pick it. Like, what the fuck am I going to say?
A movie I have already picked for the channel.
That's true. But, like,
we're watching Green Lantern.
We could talk in depth about Green Lantern.
We could. And we've also already watched it.
We have.
That being said, what's wrong with the second watch?
Everything is wrong with the second watch. So catch you guys next time for episode 2.
See ya.